Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I know it is bright and early this morning, so thank you all for rallying after an amazing Keith Urban concert last night. So my name is Marilyn, and I'm the CMO at MLS Technology, and I'm just very excited to have this discussion today. Just a couple of housekeeping items. We are going to be recording this event, and so it will be made available to all of our MLS Association partners on the backside of this. So if you want to share it with any of your colleagues that were not able to be here today, you'll be able to do so. We really want today to be a very open conversation. We planned a small intimate crowd because we wanted to have a conversation, a roundtable type discussion. So even though we have panelists up here, we want you to be involved. We want you to ask questions, pick their brains, collaborate together. We are here to support each other and nurture. At Elm Street, your members are truly like the core to our business, and we are here to serve you and to serve your members with meaningful educational content, with technology, and to help you develop non-dues revenue opportunities. A lot of our members and our staff are within the audience today. If you're a part of Elm Street, just kind of raise your hand. Yeah. And so ask us questions, collaborate with us. On the backside of this, we want to have meaningful conversations with each and every one of you. And I'd like to go ahead and introduce our panel. Probably need no introductions at all, but Marilyn Wilson, who is a wonderful friend from Wave and RA Technology, is going to be moderating for us today. And then Dave Wetzel from MLS Listings, Jim Archie from Bright MLS, and Chris Haran from MRED. And these guys are just going to have a fantastic conversation with all of you today. So sit back, enjoy the conversation.
So let's just kick it off. We've been here for a few days now. We've all had, official and unofficial conversations. What's the thing that stuck out to you guys the most this week? What's your takeaway? Is there one? Dave, do you have one?
Yeah, I think I had two different types of takeaways. So one takeaway was I love going through the exhibit hall and just looking for vendors that I have not seen before. Mm-hmm. We haven't been able to do that for so long. And so I think that was a gap in what we've been doing for the last year and a half. So it was nice to be able to do that. But the other thing that was a takeaway from you that was interesting was the whole conversation around the broker back office fees. Okay. And I think what was news to me was that I went and talked to one of our large brokers while we were here. And she had told me that there's a number of markets that they're in that they don't get those fees. And I was just kind of surprised because that just seemed like a normal, obvious thing that we should all be doing. So I was a little bit surprised about that, but I'm glad that is going the direction it's going now.
Well, the other one that's not well known at all and not well distributed is the MyDXP, the thing from last time where brokers can get their own history, pull it out and put it where they want. That's even difficult to find. I mean, nobody really even has a name for it. MyDX was sort of a thing that the Emerging Issues Committee came up with, right? But it's never actually been named.
Well, I thought that was Greg Robertson trying to make fetch happen, so.
Well, that could be, it probably was that too, I don't know. But, so that's another one, you're right. But they're not, that's the thing, it's like, you get spoiled when you work with, like the people in this room, like I was saying, when I looked at the list who was here, like this is the 404 class, this isn't the 101 class for MLS. These are the people that already know what's happening. So this group is like, what are you talking about? But it is very much like that when you get out there into other markets. It's kind of crazy. But Jim, what did you see?
So I work on premium products for Bright primarily. So a lot of it, exactly like they were saying, vendors, especially some of the reach partners that I hadn't heard of before. So I'm going to meet them and see where their products fit into our sort of roadmap. And now we have a bigger roadmap that we're trying to make sure premium lines up with. So I think that just seeing how technology shifts line up with what Bright wants to do too.
That's awesome. Hey, did any of you guys go to the IOI summit this year? That was well, okay, I know you were there. If you haven't gone to that from that purpose and just to see what's happening, I think they are doing a phenomenal job because they have this pitch battle, which we got to judge, which is super fun. But what was great about it was we did this like 3 years ago, and of course we didn't have this because of all the other crazy stuff. they have found some really interesting companies, not just in residential, in multifamily, in commercial, in rental, in fair housing. And so I think they recorded that, if I'm not mistaken. If they did, I would highly recommend you check it out. But it's a really interesting conference to think about for next year if you haven't gone. It's just really, it's like one step further out from the people that are fully commercialized, and it really gets you thinking about what are the roles that MLSs might be able to play. The multifamily people came out, the national multifamily housing, I don't know, they started throwing these buzzwords around, and we all know our buzzwords, right? But it was like, wow, like there's so much more to this real estate ecosystem than we really recognize, and there's probably roles for MLSs to play if we thought about it as a much larger footprint than just residential. So it's interesting. Chris, what did you see? What's your takeaway?
How much taller people are when they're standing up. Yeah, no, it's to be serious though. Yeah, I did realize actually, this is the last conference of the year, thank God, because I'm very tired. But it was amazing to me. Like I realized how short I actually was once I started talking to people in person again, because you're all like eyesight. So
right?
It was great to see people again, even if I have to crane my neck at a few of you. So, but in all seriousness, I do think the depth of the conversation around cooperation between MLSs that we've been having at some of these conferences, that I think is really starting to solidify more and more, I think has been really fascinating. I've been on the MLS side for only 3.5 years now, and it's a markedly huge difference this year compared to previous years on the kind of conversations we're having. So.
Were you guys in the association forum when we were talking about all this collaboration? How many were at that session?
Oh, that was a great panel.
Yeah, it was really, Dave did an awesome job on that. But while we're on that subject, why don't we jump back into those a little bit? Why don't you take interoperability with the showrooms, and then Dave, if you want to talk about MLS Align, that'd be awesome. Okay.
So I don't know if you heard, but back in February, Zillow bought Showing Time. A little bit of big news. And I'm sure, like many of you in the crowd at our level, at our MLS and MRED, we did have our subscribers reach out. And what was interesting, we kind of had the knee-jerk reaction of let's just drop this and move on. That actually disappeared really quickly because there wasn't anywhere else to go, right? Like there wasn't this big choice of other competitors out there to do. And then the questions we got immediately after that from our top brokers was, are you planning on bringing in a competitor? And if you are, how are you going to make them work together? Because if you just bring someone in to have another choice and they don't actually work together, that's actually the worst thing you can do, because then you'll fragment the entire marketplace. So we actually had our brokerages telling us, don't rush to bring in someone else, like let's figure this out. And so we started thinking about how to figure that out, and we started road mapping and some focus groups going, and realizing how huge of a project this was going to be for MRED to do by itself, even with the resources we have. And then luckily we got hooked up with Bright and MLS, and we all realized that we had the exact same problem. We were having the exact same conversations. We were going to spend the exact same amount of money and time. And it was going to take us all a lot longer to do if we did it on our own. And this was obviously not just a three of us problem, it was an industry problem. So we started really working through what that could mean and what we could do. And we looked at the different models out there, done a couple different presentations, but essentially we looked at, we've got a potentially fragmented marketplace that we're heading to right now. And the options we could have would be have a distributed workplace or distributed marketplace where the various showing vendors are talking directly to each other. They're all building custom integrations, market by market. That's going to take a really long time and not going to look great either. You could have a purely centralized marketplace. And that one sounded great in a utopia vision, but then we started talking about who's actually going to run that registry in the middle. That's going to be the one that manages all that traffic. And there were a couple vendors that raised their hand and said, we'd be happy to. And we said, thanks, but no thanks. So then we got back to, let's do more of a localized version of that. So obviously the MLS is that marketplace right now. We set up cooperation between all the brokers and agents. Let's take that one step further to the vendors, and how can we be that marketplace to help them share information so they can cooperate without directly integrating with each other. And that's really the genesis for what we're doing and what we're working on, and we're really excited about where we can take that going forward.
So just now that we have a smaller crowd, there was questions I so wanted to ask you, but we didn't have time the last time. What does that mean for other MLSs? I mean, three of you guys are engineering it, but is it kind of, and this isn't the right technical term, but it's a sort of an open source concept. In other words, other MLSs can jump in and use this stuff, or how does it work?
That's a
Yeah.
perfect term. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because we don't know at what level we're in open source yet, because there's a lot of different ways to open source something, right?
Right.
And how far you want to take it, what kind of support you add to it, how much you let everyone else run free with it. So that's some stuff we're talking about a little bit, but the idea is at some level, what we're doing, we just did a hackathon before RESO. So we had our API exposed, we put out kind of a base version of the hub to work against. And what we took that feedback, and our idea is some component of that, once we're ready for production in 2022, we do want to make that available to the other MLSs in the industry, because you have all the same problems we had, and it doesn't. And honestly, it's going to be good for the vendors too, because if they know that what they're working on with us.
So if you're an MLS that doesn't have the depth of tech resources that all of you guys have, how do you participate? I mean, is there going to be tech resources to help the MLSs actually do this, or how's that going to work? Or haven't you gotten there yet?
So that's the part that we're discussing still, is like, what's the business model on that part, right? Because it does come down to business model at some point. I mean, you can make endpoints available, you can even make certain repositories available for people to get started with, but to your point, there are going to be MLSs, especially once you get past, I mean, unfortunately, the MLSs that usually come to these conferences are not the MLSs we're necessarily concerned about, it's the other ones, right, that don't have the tech talent or the resources to be able to do it. And then the reason why we called it the hub was we didn't actually say that this was always going to be an MLS standing this up. Like the idea could be a showing time or a showing when you're at Tours or any of the other vendors that are out there. Like they could theoretically say, we will take this hub and build it for you, so you can have that at your MLS if you want us to do that.
So that's still working through it.
But that's kind of the thought process.
You could even have like the state association take that out.
Exactly. Yeah,
Or maybe Outstream.
Oh, there you go.
Did I do my job?
I think I got to check your something.
Okay, got it. All right, awesome. And so MLS Align is a whole different kind of, for those of that worked at this thing, it was, I think, one of the best panels I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I was involved with it, but it wasn't because of me. It was just, what was so neat about it was like everybody laid down their arms. Because there's been times, let's face it, can I be honest? There's sometimes big brokers or big MLSs get on stage and it's like, oh, we're the big MLSs and you're not. And there's kind of this tone, and it wasn't like that at all. It was like, I think everyone in the world has recognized, when you look at what's going on in prop tech collectively, and there just in Q2, there were like 50 companies that raised between 25 and $50 million, just Q2. And then we look at the little bash we had last night. I mean, that company's spending big money, right? And they're going to spend bigger money on God only knows what, but it's going to be fun, I'm sure. I hope there's other bands involved.
I heard Disneyland next year.
Yeah, Disneyland, that sounds good.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think there's a recognition that we just can't get there. We collectively don't have enough money. You can't out-money that crowd. We got to outsmart that crowd and out-collaborate that crowd.
Yeah.
And so I think everybody's just kind of come to that place. It was really interesting to see, and I thought it was really inspiring, frankly, just to see all these new ideas. So here's a different approach. Talk about MLS Align.
Yeah, so MLS Hostings is one of 6 MLSs that are part of MLS Align. Beaches was the last one we just added recently. So MLS Align took a different view of things. We were in the process of signing with the showing service that was acquired. And luckily we were at that stage, so we said, wait a minute, let's not sign just yet. Let's go back and take a look if that's really the right thing for us. And so we started analyzing all the different showing services out there. And there were a lot of new entrants into the market, as we saw. And the other MLSs that are part of MLS Align, guess what? They were all doing the same thing.
Same thing, right? Shared problem.
Yeah, so we get together on a regular basis to talk about the problems that we're solving, the challenges that we have, and that came up as we said, what can we do together? And so we started thinking outside the box and said, well, we could all share on the analysis of this one and figure out if that's the right one. And we said, let's actually go back and look and see what else we can do outside that. And we acquired the assets from a company that had a showing service up there. And so now we're in the process of adding a few more features to that. It is up and running, but once we get those last few features on it, we'll have it in beta and we'll have it out in production in early 2022. And it's owned by these 6 MLSs. So it's unlikely that a broker would buy it. It's unlikely that it would change ownership in a way that would be detrimental to an MLS because it's the MLSs that own that.
Yeah, and Chris, you're involved with MLS Grid too, right?
Yes.
That's another collaborative. Like, it's just like they're coming more fast and furiously now, but it's really cool. This one solves a different problem, so let's talk about that one.
Oh, sure, yeah.
That's a good one too.
Yeah, MLS Grid is all about data delivery and licensing. And the idea was, it started with 10 MLSs. I think we're up to 12 now. It's about 250,000 members across the country that it covers. But the idea behind MLS Grid was really to help solve a pain point for brokerages and for vendors who are accessing data from multiple MLSs. And that pain point, and I actually was one of those people who had that pain point because I used to be with brokerage before I switched over to MLS. And I worked with 5 MLSs in my footprint. So anytime I wanted to roll out a new product, I would have to get those license agreements. I'd review them with my legal team, pay my legal team for all of that, and then get in line for the various board meetings to get that approved by each of the MLSs to get that data access, which luckily MRED was one of the better MLSs to work with when I was on the brokerage side, but there were other ones that were more challenging. And it's definitely something that for a brokerage, like you have, especially if you're a national brokerage, you have entire departments that's just devoted to dealing with that. I know that Elm Street is more familiar with that than probably anyone else in this room because you have to deal with all the MLSs on those kind of data feeds. So yeah, MLS Grid was really just about trying to make that process easier. I mean, we do have a single data feed and single access for to be able to get that information, but it's really about the unified license. You're going to look at the same agreement depending on whatever MLS you're working with. So your legal team doesn't have to modify and negotiate 12 different agreements to get data. But then it's all in the one place. So I think that was really the pain point we were trying to solve with that. And it's definitely very different. I know MLS Align has their own API as well, but we were kind of coming at different problems. But it was all about let's just, again, try and come up with something that we can all do together because we're just trying to solve the same problem. So.
And you guys do compliance too, right?
Yes, yeah, that was a great thing for me to not have to do anymore at MRED was foisting that off onto somebody there. So yes, compliance for the web audits, yeah. So if you're messing with our IDX or BOW rules, having someone else do that for us and just report back to me, hey, this person, we're going to shut them off because they're not listening. I'm like, great, thumbs up, nice job. So.
Well, and there's an unofficial little hush network about that, right? If one of you guys found someone that is not doing the right thing, don't you kind of unofficially call each other and go, hey, have you seen something going on with this company? But this kind of makes it more transparent.
Absolutely.
That's a hypothetical question, right?
Totally hypothetical. It's never happened before.
Hey, if there's a bad actor in the industry, I think it's good for everyone else to know about that too. And hopefully we help educate that bad actor to understand what they're doing wrong. We don't want to necessarily just kick you out, but if you're not going to listen, then.
Sometimes we get calls like that from all over the world. It's like, well, Wave Group works with MLSs. Don't you have the easy button? You can just get us all the data. You don't have to license it. You can just give it to us. There's a lot of people that want to work around the system, unfortunately. So what about you guys? Is there any ideas that you've been kicking around with, ways that you think, wow, I would love to do that, but I just don't have the resources myself, or a pain point that you've identified that you're like, wow, it would be great to do some of these kind of collaborations? Has anybody seen work on any of those, or anything come to mind what the things that you saw this week?
I mean, I've definitely been paying very close attention to this hub idea because, I'm a perfect example. I don't have a developer. I don't have a tech team. I need some way to, and that was the very first question that came up when this happened is why can't we have multiple showing services?
Right.
And I'm sure every other MLS in the country probably has the same question. So I'm watching that very closely.
Gotcha.
And then, and the concept of the other collaboration groups is great too. Just not sure how it would work with the size differences sometimes. So we should talk about that sometime.
Well, what I'll say about size differences is, because this was true on the brokerage side too, we all think we're very unique. All you have to do is talk to any other MLS out there and you'll realize you're not unique.
Yeah,
We're not so
It doesn't really matter the size.
Our questions were nearly identical.
Yeah.
The exact same pain points and the exact same process.
Yes.
I'm half the size of Bright, and it was a lot of the same conversations.
Yeah.
And Richard, just like you're looking at the entire tech team of MRED right here, even with our subscriber base. So we do not have in-house development or anything like that. And I just say, don't let your size get in the way because I think you'll be very surprised when you start having those conversations how similar your problems are.
Well, I won't name names, but this is another thing to think about. So we work with MLSs that are smaller, 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, not 80,000, 100,000, whatever. A lot of these guys are bigger. And sometimes you go to your vendor and you're trying to get them to do something, and they're like, that's nice. Yeah, you're so nice. I love you, Richard, but it's not going to happen. don't tell you no, they just never say yes. And another way to get energy going is if you want to do something and you know who else is using that same company, you can partner with them. I just did this. I just collected 2 or 3 people that were working with one company that was not giving any of them the attention they deserved. And when they all went to them together, somehow it got pushed up higher on the roadmap. So that's something to think about. It doesn't cost you anything other than to just kind of, so if any of you ever have that problem, I'm happy to just tell you, if, you know, like I think that person and that person and that person's working with them, it can make a difference and it doesn't cost you anything. It's just, you know, there is strength in numbers.
Yeah, there's a couple of Flex customers that have unofficially started, I'll vote for your ticket if you vote for ours.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. There's nothing wrong with that. If it's a fundamental need and for whatever reason the vendor's not prioritizing it, you've got the power. You can change that. All right, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I even hate bringing this word up, but we kind of have to. You just can't avoid it. The word COVID. Do we love that word? No, we don't love that word. But everything has changed a lot. The whole world, especially on the tech front, right? So on your chairs or on your tables, I left you a study that we just put out because we were hearing all different kinds of things about how COVID has changed and how people want to work and all of that. So we just kind of wanted to quantify, is that really what's going on? So feel free to take a look at that. But what have you guys learned from COVID, good, bad, or indifferent? And how has your organization changed because of it? You want to start that one?
I will say just everything I read in the report is basically us. So all the findings were, oh yeah, that's kind of how we did it. So I think the big thing for us was how fast we had to shift and how fast our brokers and our subscribers shifted to recover. And we span a fairly large market, so there's different rules in different states, and some were open and just ready to go, and others were a month behind. Basically weren't allowing showings. So virtual showings and a lot of those kind of things, and then just make sure our staff was available and ready to go, fully remote.
So have some things stuck? I mean, I know we're kind of still in it. Nobody wants to admit that, but we kind of still are, right?
Yeah,
but
I mean,
how has the organization changed, do you think?
I mean, a lot of it had been customer engagement and broker engagement events, and that was really the driver. So lots of miles on lots of cars, and now it's a webinars. I mean, our attendance rate, our registration rates are 100% higher than they were, and we have more drop off and people in and out more, but it allows us to communicate. Also allows us to communicate to areas where we hadn't traveled to as often, or those kind of things. So I think it definitely stuck. And we were even talking. Our support staff is 100% virtual. We put our emergency snow plan into full effect, and now that is our plan. But they, we've won awards. That group has reduced their call volume, I think it's 10 or 15%, because we've done education.
So you've saved money.
Yeah, and
That's been interesting.
And it was interesting because you said, it was 19% of the people actually analyzed how much money we saved. It's not my job.
In the study, right, because I pulled data from other people in it, and I did this locally. We had an employee that was going to work for us, and she was going to walk around the corner, so she didn't have any drive or anything, or a same job 20 miles north of us. And there's a calculation. She was going to save $9,000 a year by not just doing that commute every day. So take that, and the studies are saying that it could be as much as $22,000 depending on how far away you live and how expensive it is to park and all of that kind of stuff. So that's on the employee side. So everybody gets a raise. And I don't think any of us have taken credit for that. That's something to think about, is like, you guys just saved a bunch of money. We just saved a bunch of money. It's all good. But Dave, how did you see, what's been different in your business?
Well, first off, so we're in California, so I don't know what a snow plan is. So I didn't have something on the shelf to pull off and execute on. So what we did, actually, we did something interesting, and that was we were watching this as it unfolded in 2020. So if you recall, in January of 2020, it was in China. And then January, February, it went to Italy, it went to France, it went to Spain, and we saw all these other countries shutting down. We knew it was going to be coming here. Yep. So what I did before this started, I started taking teams from MLS listings and telling them, Richard, tomorrow you're working from home with your entire team.
Oh, you were practicing.
We practiced. And then
Interesting.
Richard, the next day you're going to come back and you're going to tell us what worked, what didn't work, what were the challenges.
Great idea.
And so we did this one by one throughout the different teams in the company before the shelter in place hit us. And we learned at that point that the communications, we needed whatever it was that you had as your daily communications, where you could just walk down the hall and tap someone on the shoulder and ask them a question. That wasn't really working, and so we needed to kind of over-communicate. We needed to go back and look at the tools that we were using, and we needed to make some fine-tuning changes to that before the shelter-in-place started. So we did that probably about 3 weeks, 4 weeks before it happened. So we were ready when it happened.
Yeah, because it hit you early too.
And
In
us
Northern
early.
California early. You were like
Yeah.
March, right?
Yeah, we were in March when that happened. And then the other thing we did is then we went back and we said, okay, let's look at the way that we're touching all of our subscribers. Because we used to drive out, like we were same thing. We used to drive out and be there and teach classes. And so we went to the webinars. And then we said, okay, now those webinars are getting a lot of hits. How do we do this differently now? So then we created a vendor series on those, and we brought in all the vendors, and we said, let's
That's smart.
do a vendor series so that we have different frequencies of when we do these. We have a vendor series one, we have once a month a live one that we have different people come in and talk, and then we just really upped the number of just pure training classes that were all virtual. The other thing that we did too was, just by coincidence, I'd like to say it was planned out, but it really wasn't. But in 2019, we added a number of different spaces in our database for someone to put up to 4 sets of virtual tours in a listing. And this was based on subscriber feedback in 2019, before we even knew anything about COVID. And they had said, you know what? I have the Matport tour. I have drone footage. And so we said, okay, let's put in 4 sets of these things. And we did that, and nobody used them in 2019, except for the couple of people that asked for it. And then we had sent that out through all of the notification to all the people that were picking up the data feeds, and nobody was picking them up in 2019. And then in early 2020, I got a call from all the big brokers who said, you know, Dave, I remember seeing an email that came out about those URLs, but I can't find it now. So can you help me figure that out? And all of a sudden,
got lucky.
and then instantly our subscribers started using those. And so the other thing that changed was, you know, as everybody knows, everybody went virtual on all of the tours, and so that happened. And now, of course, then open houses and broker tours were all shut down, but eventually they opened up. And what we saw was on the broker tour side, it didn't really come back in full force. And a lot of that is still virtual. Open houses came back. People started going back to open houses. But what we're starting to see right now is we're starting to see that kind of tail back off. And we're kind of monitoring that to see, well, is that seasonal? Is that usual seasonal? Or is it because the COVID rates are kicking back up again? And we think that we'll see more people doing that. And so to go back to those virtual things that they can look at instead of going out to the house to look at it.
Now, Chris, you're a good example. This is something else that we've seen a lot of. Where do you live now?
Well, I'd love MRED to do the study on my commute savings. In June, we moved from Oak Brook, which is a suburb of Chicago, out to Escondido, which is about 35 minutes north of here. So I am one of 3 MRED employees who moved during the pandemic and left the state, and we're one of 5 because we actually hired 2 people. We hired a person out in Washington for our help desk, and we hired a business intelligence architect from Atlanta, Georgia. So yeah, what's been great about that is, especially from a recruiting perspective, I would have never been able to get that person that I did from Georgia. He's originally from Verizon. He's been a great asset already to the company in a couple of months he's been here. But that would have been completely infeasible for him to think of moving and leaving his family that he lives with down there. And obviously it would have been, very difficult for me to do my job if we weren't good with that hybrid workforce. So it's been fantastic. I think it's worked really well for us. What we've, learned is it's not about the hours that you're putting in as so much as what you're getting done. So what's the output? What are the projects? I think that our team, outside of obviously help desk and rules have set hours that they have to be available, but I think the rest of our team that work on projects and strategic initiatives, we've really adapted to this kind of asynchronous work style and the idea that you should work when you're most effective. And that's not necessarily 8 hours straight in a day. Like maybe you're really effective for the first couple hours in the morning and then you need to take a couple hours in the middle of the day because you have to go run errands or take your kid to school or do whatever you need to do. And then you come back and you're refreshed, you recharge, and you get even more done later. So I think the biggest problem we had at the beginning of the pandemic, to Dave's point, we were also over communicating. I actually saw way more of MRED employees during the pandemic via Zoom and Teams calls than I ever did in the office. I used to joke all the time because we actually had 2 days at home anyways before the pandemic because we had, for those of you who know Comcast, we had Comcast as our internet provider, and our help desk would go down about once or twice a month. That's always really fun when you have to shut down the help desk because you don't have internet in your office building. So Rebecca Jensen, our CEO, put in 2 days remote every week anyways. So we all had equipment and everything, but every Friday before the pandemic, I would come in and I'd have to turn on all the lights and I'd be by myself in 15,000 square feet on Fridays. So it was just something that made sense for us. And we have 3 people that go into the office on a regular basis now because they're close and they want to, but everyone else is staying home and staying remote. And, we're just going to plan to bring people together for 3 to 4 times a year. So we have that in-person, face-to-face. We obviously have the conferences as well. And we just do a lot of weekly communications via the different video conferencing tools out there to stay in touch. But
that was one of the things that I would have guessed it would come out that way, but if you look at the study, people believe that, I know it was like 92% said they were either as, if not more productive in this environment. How many of you guys is there anybody in your markets that have left that don't live local anymore? They relocated? Shelley, you got one? Have you got one too? You do. Where did you go? Oh, so you're not in Miami either. Interesting. And did you miss a trip? Do you feel like you're disconnected in any way, or you're good?
No, actually, I feel like I'm more engaged with the staff because I oversee different segments of the staff. I think our meetings via Zoom, because of the travel time in South Florida, really benefited all of our people. But for me, I used to do the commute the other direction from Miami to Orlando, and now I do Orlando to Miami when we did it in person. But the Zoom, meetings are just critical to staying in touch.
Yeah, I think we've changed, all work habits have changed permanently because of this. And then, have any of you had your board fighting you on, you want to hire, like when you were hiring someone from out of the area, that you probably did because you were already kind of half the hiring, but does anybody had challenges? I'm working on a couple of recruiting assignments right now where the owners and our board of directors are like, no, they have to be here. And the candidates are like, but why? Why? I don't get it. Are you getting any of that pushback? They're recognizing that it's okay to do that?
or nobody wants to throw their board under the
Yeah.
bus.
We won't put names when you can raise your hand.
We haven't had any pushback from our board. Our board has been great and super supportive, and I think they trust us. We've found one thing, and that is that, for example, our help desk, who used to sit sort of in the bullpen and could hear each other, and were very consistent in their answers to our subscribers, have lost consistency in their answers, and so we've had to learn how to better prep them, how to make scripts for them. We just have to address it differently because they can't hear each other as well. So we're doing a hybrid comeback, having people be in the office like 3 days a week and home 2 days a week, and we're not super rigid on that, but we want to make sure there are times for collaboration and times for focused work on the product. But coming together seems to be really important. Being able to hear each other and how they speak to our members seems to be something valuable for our help desk. And so
Interesting.
that was, we didn't know that until after a year is when it started to fall away a little bit. So
Shelley, what we're doing on that front is that all of our help desks have an open chat that's going on, so they can all chat while they're on these calls. And then all of our calls to help desk are recorded. And the director of that area periodically goes back and listens to some of those for training purposes. And when he hears things like that, he could then send out something on chat to all of them in real time so that that's happening. The other area that we saw that was really helpful in that is sometimes you'll see a theme of those calls come in, right? And that's an area where before they would have just heard that and they would have said, oh, we've got this one issue, oh, photos aren't working right or something, right? And knowing that there's a common theme happening is another area. So that's where all that chat's happening. But they have to know that that's something that now they have to communicate differently. Where before they would have heard it over the cubicle, now they need to type something in and just say, hey, I'm seeing this. And so that's just something that they have to do.
Yeah, our association, we have 6 people in our member services, and same, it's a big open area. And what we ended up doing, and I'm in California as well, is we delayed the start time for our member services team, so it used to be 8:30 to 5. And so we delayed it, so now they don't start answering phones until 9. And between 8:30 and 9, I'm the education director, I am available on Zoom, and they can jump in and ask questions, and we're getting phone calls and we don't know how to answer this, or this isn't working right, or whatever. And so that half-hour time at the beginning of the day is spent networking, either on Zoom or using, our accounts.
That's a great idea.
I wish I could have a notebook up here.
Just a question I had, and I think we're getting to this point, is that your support to your constituents has always been a high touch, right? They can stop by the office, there's a lot of interaction. Have you been getting some pushback from your constituents because you're all remote now? And by the way, if you are going to take your staffs, make them remote, bring them to Michigan.
We haven't had a lot of pushback on that because it just seems like they can reach them a lot easier now. One of the things that we did add to that was we added something that we call open office hours. And so we have a Zoom meeting on a regular frequency that happens where there's no agenda.
Okay.
And we have subscribers call in. We have people call in that didn't even have a question. They just want to hear what the topics are that were going on.
It's like a clubhouse on Zoom.
Yeah. And so then what we'll usually do is we'll usually add in one topic just to kick it off with, but there's a lot of them.
And how often do you do that?
We started it doing once a month, and now it's actually, we do it for, last time we did it for 90 minutes, and then we didn't close it off at the end of 90 minutes because people were the dialogue was just happening there. And so, it's just like office hours that your college professors used to have. But
Did you have a comment back there on this topic?
I think one of the untapped resources that we really now appreciate more than ever are our trainers and our broker outreach people.
yeah.
Because our trainers, each one of our locations had a full functioning computer lab, and they used to teach hands-on for not just MLS, but for products and services. And that gets kind of lost on Zoom. So our trainers became part of our support staff, and it's trainers@miamire.com. They can get them on chat, they can call on the phone, and all those how-to questions are not being handled by MLS any longer. We're actually handling true MLS questions. And the trainers are answering all the how-tos. And they're so popular now that they have their own schedule, almost like a show. Ask the trainers each week on Zoom. And our members can actually just dial in and ask them anything they want during those sessions. And it has been unbelievably successful. So,
That's a great idea. I mean, it's kind of, and not that we wanted to get here the way we got here, but it's kind of exciting the amount of innovation that's kind of, I don't want to say it's been forced, but it kind of was, right? And it's the same thing, I think some of you guys were on them. When COVID first started, we did a thing called Coffee Chat every day for 90 days. I did a webinar every morning. Probably wouldn't do that again. But the reason was, everybody, we were all like this, right? What can we do to help? Like, it is crazy out there. We're in California, if you remember, for the first week, 2 weeks, everybody was deemed non-essential. Basically, CIR sent a note and said, everybody put your listings on hold. The whole market freaked out. And so we started kind of doing those. In fact, you were on one, Deb, or Teresa was, I can't remember. I think it was Teresa. And that was super helpful too, because it was same kind, wasn't quite as how-to, which I think if I did it again, I would make it more how-to. But it was super helpful because we were forcing, not we, this whole thing was forcing agents to do all the stuff that we know they probably should have been doing all along, and they knew they should have been doing all along. So it was pretty neat. But speaking of that, I'm gonna switch gears for a minute. A couple of areas, and I think I'll start with the broker one. So we've all heard the word brokercentricity a lot in the last couple of years, right? Like, what does that mean? How do you do it? How do we support broker innovation? Do they even know how to support broker innovation, right? All of those things. So what have you guys done to really embrace the concept that brokers have to be a core part of your thought process, and maybe expanding the role, expanding the partnership? I don't know, but you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah. So again, I think we've looked at broker innovation more from broker productivity.
Mm-hmm.
What as the MLS can we be doing?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of resources into market stats, market reports, these kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
Building a broker dashboard, which is not out yet, but it's soon coming, so they can really dial into their people.
Mm-hmm.
Just making sure our data on the brokerage is as good as possible. So, and improving actually some other things. So we're rolling out a Teams component, so their teams, they can see what their teams are doing. And so it's, a lot of that is really just education and information for the brokers. And again, on the premium side, it's also tools and partnerships. So Elm Street, we've got a broker-centric product with them, and so I think it's just what do brokers need from us? Because we've got the very large brokers to the thousands of 2-person, 3-person brokers.
Yeah.
So the long tail.
So how do you get input from them?
We try. We broker newsletters, broker dashboard communications, ongoing market stats and reports that they get. We try to work very closely with the associations as well, and connect in through them. But it is certainly, I don't know the exact numbers, but well over 95% of our subscribers log into our system every week.
That's awesome.
But the brokers are not that same level. Their business is not inside the MLS as much. So it's really now, what can we do for them that will help them come in? Or even just if they don't want to come in, what can we give them to help them be successful?
So,
Chris,
you were a broker.
I was, yeah.
So that must have been a big flip for you. But how have you tried to bake in broker centricity into MRED?
So I think how MRED's looking at that is, in the nicest way possible, how can we stay out of their way when we need to? Meaning, just like you guys, we have this widespread of brokerage size, and you have your larger brokerages. Our largest brokerage is actually an independent that's starting its own franchising operations. We have the big franchise chains, the big national brokerages, but then we have, to Jim's point, we have 4,000 offices that are less than 10 people, less than 5 people. So there's still always going to be a need for the MLS from a tools and a services perspective. But a lot of what we're looking at is, how do you not treat all of those different businesses exactly the same? It's very easy as an MLS to just say we're going to get one contract for this one service and call it a day. But that's not really the best serving for your members, because a lot of those brokerages don't want to use that product because they have their own competing product. But then the other thing we always have to keep in mind as an MLS is we want to make sure that that data is always coming back in, that we're still having that cooperation between the agents, that those listings are still part of that data set. So a lot of what we're looking at when we look at broker choice is, how do we cater to those who want to have their own platforms, their own ecosystem, that don't want to be stuck to what's offered by the MLS. And a lot of those just opening up the MLS as completely as we can, exposing business rules so they can do that listing input and put that stuff in. But so essentially they could build their tools so their agents can just stay in their ecosystem the entire time and never have to come to the MLS. But because we allow that for them, their data still stays as part of it. They don't pull out of it. I don't know how many of you know the history of MRED, but before 2008, there were 2 major MLSs fighting each other, one broker owned, one association owned. Lots of lawsuits, millions and millions of dollars, and the idea there was the brokers had pulled out because they didn't like what the association MLS was doing. So they decided to create their own club. And obviously that's not great for a marketplace when you have that kind of thing going on. So that's always stayed in MRED's DNA. We're still broker owned to this day, and they have a huge say in what goes on. And that's what we're thinking about today as we see more and more of these brokerages become more tech focused and want to build their own things. And it's not going to be all of them. There's a couple who will do it, but there's going to be a lot of them who say, well, I like what they're doing, but I don't have the resources, so can I white label something that you might have to make it look like mine? So there's going to be all kinds of different tiers that we can get to provide those services to those brokerages.
And how do you get input from brokers?
So we do a variety of things. We do, from a digital perspective, NPS surveys at a general level. We do that twice a year. We do NPS surveys on a monthly basis on specific products, so we can get really detailed core feedback there. We have a fantastic broker outreach team that does both virtual and in-person calls, so they'll go directly to those brokerage owners, who we call our preferred unit owners, people who have bought a stake in MRED, and talk with them and get their feedback. We do lots of trainings, obviously a lot of virtual now, but we get a ton of feedback there. And our help desk does about 10,000 tickets a month, so it's where a lot of the feedback comes in addition to just hosting some regular webinars. And we'll also be having some new standing webinars based on some of the feedback I've heard in this meeting, because I think that's so we'll be gathering a lot of input to that. So.
And is your governance broker led, or who's on your board?
So we have a 15-member board and 13, it's mostly brokerages. We have 2 spots for associations, and we actually have 2 strategic managers as well. The strategic managers are people from outside of MRED. Generally speaking, they're MLS executives, but we do have it so we could pull anyone from outside the industry if we needed to. But yes, it's definitely primarily broker-driven, and they have obviously great insight on what goes on from a practitioner standpoint. But what I love about our board is they really show up to events like these. So they're very sophisticated on what's going on inside the industry. And I think they have really high-level strategic conversations. And they also do a great job of letting Rebecca really run what she needs to from there too. So they will have those conversations, but then the actual execution, they leave up to her and her team to actually run that. So I think our board is great about understanding, what they contribute, and then letting MRED staff do what they need to do to get that done on their behalf. So.
Your board seems to be pretty supportive of being the kickoff for corporate, nationwide initiatives.
Yes.
They were really big at BPP. They actually did a consumer campaign before we had CoStar, spending millions of dollars. So they've done some, they seem to be very magnanimous about, it's going to help our market, but if it can help the entire industry, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, they have a high tolerance for risk, and they're definitely a big believer in sharing. I mean, one of our core values is servant leadership, and we take that really seriously within the industry itself. So even if we're not going to work directly with someone, we're more than happy to tell everything we've learned, because we really believe that it does affect everyone else, and there's not that much secret sauce in the industry, and the competition is not really competition with other MLSs, it's really competition with the other outside forces that are going on in the industry.
Exactly. And Dave, is there any other kinds of things that you do for broker engagement or brokercentricity?
Yeah, I think when we look at that, we see things that are kind of falling into mostly 2 categories. And so we have our own dashboard that we've created for quite a while. It does have a broker dashboard section that a broker or an office manager can get into, so they can see a number of things there. We are adding some of the same things that you're looking at into that dashboard.
Sounds like a collaboration opportunity right now.
But the other category that we see are the innovative brokers. And what do they need? A lot of what they need, comes back to the data. And is the data that we have sufficient for them to be as innovative as they want to be? And a lot of times it's not. And so we were talking before the start about data shares and how I've got most of California in my database because of the number of different data shares I have. But not all of the MLSs have the same required fields. Some of them are optional. And that may work fine for those other markets. But then if you're a broker that's pulling that in, it doesn't always work as well. How can you create some new innovative, cool thing for your office if it's missing some things? So what we're looking at doing is we're looking and see what can I enhance on the data as it's coming in. Some of the other MLSs, for example, we get data from may not have links into any of the tax records because it was an optional field. Some of them may not have anything related to some of the schools or school districts, and so we can enhance that. And as long as we put in all the necessary little asterisks that say that this isn't from the listing agent, it's from the MLS.
Mhm.
We can make sure that that data has all the different things that it needs to have for that innovative broker who wants to do something that we're not even thinking about today.
So is there a way to not have to do that? Is there a way to do better collaboration at the data share level, do you think, to get more, resale commercial, like to have it be more standardized so you don't have to go through that stuff? Because that's gonna cost
So that's
time and money to the broker for you to do all that work, right? Ultimately,
well, it doesn't cost anything to the broker because we're adding that.
but I mean, like it costs you energy. Is my
It
point.
does. It
Yeah.
costs us energy, but then we've got an engineering team. We're geared up to do that. But to your point though, one of the alliances, we were talking about alliances and groups that we have. One that we didn't talk about is one that we have called the NorCal Alliance. And
Mhm.
The NorCal MLS.
Woo, woo,
Yes,
woo.
and so one of the things that we do with our NorCal Alliance is we get all of the directors of compliance together, and they look at all the different rules, right? And we say, okay, what are the different rules that we have? We've been focusing on those rules and seeing how we can get those rules as aligned as possible.
Mhm.
And they're pretty well aligned, wouldn't you say?
They are now.
And
It takes a while.
Launched in January.
but that is a living thing. And next month, someone's going to change a rule that we don't even know about yet today. So that group meets on a regular basis.
Mhm.
But then they're also starting to look at things like, what are the required fields? Why is this field required by some but not others? And is that okay? And I don't think we'll ever be 100% the same because our markets are slightly different, and that's okay. But as long as you have that conversation to say, why don't you have that one, Marilyn? And then
Right.
and you may go, oh, well, we hadn't thought of that. So let's.
We've always done it that way.
We've always done it that
That's
way.
right.
Exactly.
We've always
So
done it that way.
we've had some great conversations in Northern California to get some alignment around.
That's awesome. How about you guys? Try to figure out more overt ways to get your brokers involved in the driving, the focus and priority of your MLS? Yeah? She's very tentatively said, maybe.
One of the things that we've done for our brokers, and they've had for years, needed support was their office meetings.
Mhm.
And now that everything with Zoom, it was even more important that they all convey the same message. So we actually created like office meetings in a box for them, delivered it to them through their broker newsletter, and we have a very robust broker page on our website that they can go to and download pre-made, with the slides, whatever they need for their broker meetings, their office meetings. And one of the things that they requested was they needed more information about all the changes in the MLS, professional standards changes, and everything. So we just provided what they needed, and the response has been absolutely incredible.
That sounds like a collaboration opportunity too. You did all the work. Can everybody else just use it? Rob?
What about, for everybody here, how many people have their own YouTube channel? And how many people are doing podcasts and pushing that out?
So it's funny on the podcast thing, and sorry, John, for our chief communications officer, that I'm about to throw under the bus here. Back when the pandemic started, we were talking, he's like, hey, we should do a weekly podcast just to stay in touch with everyone. I was like, that's an awesome idea. Like, here's some topics we can talk about. Like, I think that's cool. He's like, okay, here's the equipment I need you to order so that you have everything you need. So I've got like this beautiful microphone set up. I've got great video set up. Guess how many podcasts we've done? Because life just got in the way, so we haven't actually done. I still love the idea, and I think it'd be a really great way to connect. I mean, it'd be similar to what you talked about with the kind of like monthly Zoom meetings, but I think it's just a great way to have that conversation. But yeah, I've got all the equipment. I'm ready to go. So, John, if you watch this later, let's go, buddy.
Okay.
I have one. Just Dave actually reminded me one of the things for innovation. We're working on a broker custom fields where brokers can basically come to us for their feeds only, and if they similarly, I mean, you guys can expose different things. Ours are really you're in our MLS, but they enter all of their stuff in one place.
Okay.
Some of the other ones have like lifestyle elements and where does it fit into their overall
Oh,
brand.
so they're putting other types of data in there.
they'd be able
Gotcha.
to, and they can actually toggle whether it's required or not. And it's only for their feed, not out, can't go anywhere else. There are very clear rules around it. And it's rolling out, but the innovative brokers have really liked it because
Oh, I bet,
They-
yeah,
their
that's awesome.
their team just does what they do normally,
Mhm.
and it feeds into their systems and it helps them see what also is happening in all their listings. So
That's a great idea.
We do something similar to the office in a box, but I think I'm going to steal that name. One of the things that we did, and we thought that was just going to be temporary. Right when all of this started, people were wondering what's happening in the market. So we started doing daily trends. How many new listings today? How many went pending? How many continued? So we started graphing that, and we made it available on a daily basis.
Oh, that's awesome.
And the offices loved it because they wanted something to talk about, and everybody was asking about that. And honestly, I thought that was just going to be a couple of months that we needed to do that, and it's been going on. So recently, we shifted that. We tried to cancel it. We said, you know what? We don't need that anymore. You can do open houses. Why do you need a daily trend? And the offices pushed back, and they said, no, we've been using this. And so we negotiated it to a weekly trend now. But it just amazed me how much, uptake there was on that. And
That's great. Well, it's kind of a not leading indicator, but a lot of market stats are from last month.
Right.
In this market, that's like 10 years ago.
And if you're dealing with a potential client, they're going to ask you, what's happening? And so the brokers all wanted all that to share in their offices. And so where I thought I was going to just do that for a couple of months and be done with it, now it's a new thing.
That's
I feel your pain on that one because we started
Robert?
weekly stats as well, and we thought again, it's going to be like until we get through this, and everyone's like, "Oh, we love it. Can you do it market by market? Can you do it zip code by zip code? Can you do it like this?"
Make it much bigger and better. Yeah.
So that's why I hired a BI person a couple months ago,
Yeah.
so we can start doing that. So yeah, it was fascinating to see how quickly they loved that and jumped on
Yeah.
it. So yeah.
Robert, did you want to jump in
Well,
on something?
Today, one of the things that I think MLS looking does brilliantly in their facility,
Green room, did you say?
and they do podcasts very, very well. So to your point, Dave might be able to help you out.
I know he was telling me about what they did really well.
Podcast
So.
very, very well. It's one of my favorite things. I watch podcasts pretty regularly. It was a training that we actually
Yeah, what's the URL for that? I tried to find it the other day. Where do you find your podcast?
Everything's on YouTube, so you can find
So
our
MLS
channel.
Listings
Yeah.
YouTube channel?
Yeah,
Okay.
you can look at our YouTube channel. It's got all of them. You'll see the vendor series. You'll see the monthly series. I'm not sure we put the office hours there, but we should. So it's all there. And yeah, before this started, we had that room set up where all of the video was done, and then it got kind of hard to use during the beginning of this, and we went to more Zoom-oriented ones. But now we're still kind of filtering back into using some of the equipment that we had before.
All right, so,
One of the
go ahead,
questions that
Robert.
I have that I've been hearing, one of the takeaways I have from the show so far is because of COVID, is the turnover in staff that a lot of IEs are dealing with. Maybe you guys can speak to that a little bit if you're experiencing the same thing. I've heard this is up to 33% of some of the staff has turned over in some of these associations because of that.
Yeah, I heard there's 4.4 million people that resigned in the last month across the country. Hopefully not all in MLSs, but what do you guys see?
Not seeing as much. I think if you look at the staff that we have, most of them have been there very, very long, 10, 15 years. And it's like a family. And so as we shifted into this, what I would call a non-linear workday, they liked that, the ability to do that. And so we haven't seen that problem yet. I think we've had one person that's left, but for the most part, we haven't worried about that. One of the things we've done is we've said we saw the news about that problem, so we went back and we said, okay, well, what are the things that we can do from that perspective? Let's go do a salary review for everybody, see if everybody's in the right range. And most are, some might not be. So just understanding that and looking at what are the reasons why they are leaving. They're leaving because of salary is one aspect of it. They're leaving because they may not like what they're doing. But in that aspect, we've had people that stayed with the company for so long. Most of them like what they're doing. And so the other thing we're looking at doing is seeing what other opportunities for growth do we have for people in the company. So we're trying to get ahead of it.
Yeah, I've heard people have lost people that didn't want to stay remote because they had, 3 children saying mommy, mommy, mommy next to them all day long. Or the other thing was they really didn't want to come back, and some people sort of forced people to come. It sounds harsh, but it's like you have to come back. And or if you required a vaccine, that they lost people along those lines. Have you guys seen any of that stuff on either of those fronts?
Well, we did a survey to our staff because we had, we'd done everything, and I don't know how about the rest of you, but like when the pandemic started, we were trying to do like weekly happy hours, and we were like way over the top to try and achieve culture. And what we realized, we did these surveys. We asked them, do you want to come back? Do you want to work hybrid? Do you want to have weekly happy hours? Do you want to be after hours, during work hours? So we asked a bunch of different questions and got responses from everybody. It was very like open back and forth about it. And ultimately, what we heard from our staff was, no, we don't want to come back. So we want to stay hybrid. We do want to see each other a couple of times a year. We don't want to do weekly happy hours. Like, I am perfectly fine. Most of them are perfectly fine of seeing you during the workday because that's what I'm paid to do. And you're lovely people, but I also don't need you to be my entire life. So it was, and they were very honest about that. And I mean, I think that's the biggest thing you do is just ask, like, find out what the staff wants. And then I think that's one of the biggest retention things you can do is if they say they want something, then actually do it. Like, you can't ask them something and then not do it, right? I think it's making sure that you're, seeing the needs. And that's why we're keeping the office, even though there's not a lot of people there, because there were still a couple people who wanted to come back in. And that's fine, they can do that. But the vast majority of them are like, no, we're good staying home, and we're good seeing you during the hours. If we want to do like an hour around lunch where we can chat for a little while and have this kind of like open conversation, that's great. But I'm not going to show up on a Thursday night at 6:30 and drink with you for 3 hours. So.
I'd say the one thing, I echo all of those points anyway, but I think the one thing the Wrights worked on is in areas where we know or there is traditionally more turnover too, is what are our plans for onboarding? Really drill into that so that if there's new people, you can't shadow as easily because you're not with anyone else. So just trying to make sure that we can still operate as effectively as we could before, because again, we've got people in 30 states now. So that's the other side of it is hiring we haven't had as many because everyone's been flexible. We've been able to attract talent from everywhere. So my boss is in Chicago and my main person I work with is in Mississippi, and so Zoom is my friend.
I think a lot of it is making sure that they're still as excited about their work as they were before the pandemic. And one of the things that I personally have had to kind of look at and keep, check over is the nonlinear work hours that we all have. And what I found myself doing, which I was doing before too, is I'd respond to email all hours of the day. But now my employees are doing the same. And there was this one time when I was responding to an email and, it was some issue. I said, we need to meet about this, and reply back. And this was like midnight. And my employee replied back within 10 minutes and said, okay, well, give me about 10 minutes and we can have a call. I was like, immediately replied back, no, that's not what I meant. I thought you would see this in the morning. We could talk in the morning. But that, if I had, continue with that, that would have led to retention problems if I didn't watch that, right? Because that's not the culture that I wanted.
All right, I want to switch gears. I'm going to put you guys in more of a something else is going on, right? Somebody bought somebody, somebody's suing somebody, somebody's stock is taking a dive, somebody's stock is going crazy, right? Every day there's something. It doesn't have to necessarily be a headline, but what's the thing that scares you the most about the thing you think could really take out the MLS? What's that thing that you're like, oh, if that happens, we're really in trouble?
I can start.
Chris already knows what it is.
I think that what will really get us in trouble is if MLSs think that they can do anything on their own to compete with what we all went to last night. To Marilyn's point earlier. Like if you can go to an event like we saw last night, or look at anything that's going on there and think that you can in any way, shape, or form compete directly with that, you are highly, highly delusional. So you have to.
Can't buy out 12 restaurants in one night?
Yeah, I mean, you have, and it was funny because a couple people were asking, like, so what do you think this costs? Because my background is actually marketing, and we used to do a lot of events, and so they're asking, what do you think this costs? And they're throwing out some numbers like, oh, you're off by like a factor of 10, like you're not even close.
What do you think it costs?
Oh, I'm not going to say that. That's a little bit, like, I don't have much of a line, but that was probably a little bit too much for me.
Okay.
But in general, like I think MLS says what we have to really think about is like, what is our core service? What is our core function? And then work with that. And what do we stretch too far on? And and find out where do we need to pull back a little bit and just do that. That is creating the best service for our members, but not overextending ourselves into areas that we should not be in. And understand that with this ecosystem that we're in, the MLS is a critical component because we drive the data that drives that entire ecosystem. But I think if we get into other certain parts of that ecosystem to try and compete because we feel like we should just because of what news are going on, I think that could get us into a lot of issues. So you have to really pick and choose your battles. And that's where coming back to the collaboration, that's why that's so important, is understanding that we're better together in a lot of areas. And there's still room for differentiation, but there's a lot of room for cooperation. So.
Okay, what keeps you guys up at night? Wake up in the morning, what would you be like, wow, this could take us out today?
Yeah, I'm actually very similar to Chris. I think making sure we're providing, just making our subscribers as successful as possible. So it's choice. It's we're the MLS, so yes, we're data, we feed out to them, but they're going to be using these other services, they're going to be using other things. How do we provide choice and integrate it so their experience is smooth, their experience is easy, so they stay relevant, they stay in contact with their clients. That still drives the industry.
So you bring up a good point, which is another, we're getting close to the end, so I wanted to ask you guys this question. There's two things I think that are dangerous that we have. One is that we usually don't have competition. Some markets do, and I'm in one of those, and I can tell you it's really, really fun. You were in one, they fixed that one and came together, right? But a lot of people don't feel that competitive pressure because they don't have competition, right? It's like, well, would you recommend the MLS? Well, of course. Why would I not? Because it's the only one that's available. I don't have to recommend it. It is what it is. What do you think MLSs need to do to dial up their focus on truly driving home their value proposition? Not just being efficient is great, right? But it's like, we don't want to be perceived as just, as long as it's on, it's good. Or as long as we're not down, it's good, right? What do we do to truly create a relationship with customers? Not just, we're here and we're staying out of your way, and as long as we do that, we're good to go. What do you guys think?
I think it's just got to be something that we keep continuing to market, to communicate, and just making sure that people understand what that value is. I mean, to your earlier thing about what are we looking for that may disrupt. I have a different view of it because I came to this industry about 7 years ago, so I don't have the length of time that everybody else does. Before that, I was in Silicon Valley in tech firms.
Very competitive in market.
Very competitive, and so I bring this concept that I share with my chair every year of chessboard, and so I've got this chessboard in my mind of all the different players, and players can instantly change from one chess piece to a stronger chess piece, or they could fall off the board or come onto the board. And so on a regular basis, my chair and I are talking about the chessboard and where do we need to be on that chessboard and what player do we need to be and what's the new players on the board. And so this chessboard changes, as you mentioned, on
every day.
On a regular day. And so making sure you have that value proposition and making sure that you're communicating with your subscribers, your members is important, and that's part of the chessboard and how you're reacting to the different chess pieces on that board.
So what piece are you?
That changes too.
Hope you're not a pawn. You're not a pawn, are you?
No, we're not a pawn, but sometimes we're not as strong of a chess player as we thought, and we need to go do something, and then so that's just something that we're always taking a look at and seeing. How does that
So
evolve?
you're going to teach everyone how to play chess so they know the differences? That's a really interesting way to look at it.
Often my chair will come back to me and go, are we playing the regular chess game or is this the multi-level?
Or is it speed chess? We're
Yeah.
playing speed chess right
Yeah.
now, I think. Awesome. So what's going on with you guys? What are you guys worried about? What do you see as something that could take us out? What's the thing that your board talks about or that you're worried about?
Broker engagement. top of mind for all of our boards.
Gotcha. Shelley?
Just all of this, right? Just all of this. And I would say being the best we can be has been a big focus for us, just sort of dialing in all across the whole organization, making sure that we're delivering on the highest level on all fronts, making sure we're just keeping up to help them keep up.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. This is something I would love to ask you guys, because I think about this all the time. We all have the leveling the playing field thing, and I feel like we're kind of getting past that one. I think everybody recognizes that everybody needs everybody. So brokers I think they finally gotten past that one in most cases. But where's the line about, like you brought up a really good example, right? Where you're bringing unique data or allowing them to bring unique data. But should we be educating them more about how real estate data, and not just MLS data, but all data could be used more effectively? Is that our job, to teach brokers to think about how to innovate? You think so?
I think it is our job. I think we have to first have all our ducks in a row so they can feel like they can trust us and we're not the ones holding them back.
Right.
But so we have to solve for that. At least that's why we have an innovation officer. So
You have an innovation officer?
yes, Tamara.
Oh, Tamara, we want to hear about that. What's that? That sounds so cool. What a fun job.
It's awesome.
Yeah, what is an innovation officer? That's really neat.
In a sentence, I said this morning is, my job is to really move my board and our members forward, right? So our branding is to get forward. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. So a lot of what you're talking about, not just from a MLS perspective, but also how are we helping them facilitate the changes. So with Help Desk, we're looking at, we need to be speaking across multi-channels, right? So we're looking at chat box and chat, not just calling. We're really trying to, because we not only have all of the issues with COVID, we have a brand new kind of millennial entry into the marketplace, and their expectation of how they interact with MLS is completely different. So we have to be out in front of that, otherwise we do become irrelevant, because the data is behind the curtain. If we don't make that super intuitive to them, they won't participate in that. So it's really important that we have the right tools. But I get to do this fun stuff. I get to be creative. So, yeah, it's great. I do have a question though, based on the event last night. What do you think, from your opinion? Because clearly there is a profit to generate, otherwise that party would not have been so amazing last evening. So what do you guys think that what are they monetizing? What is it that they're attracted to? You guys, I'd love to get your opinion on that.
I heard one thing that I could tell you. None of us have a crystal ball, and I'm sure Andy's about to tell us shortly, because he seems to like to talk. We learned that last night. But I heard one thing, and did any of you go on the floor? Did you see that booth they had that was also the size of China? And did you see all the salespeople walking around? So HomeSnap, and I'm not sure about Homes, but HomeSnap never had sort of field reps or on the, I don't know what they call them, but they never had those folks. And I don't know where they came from, if they were people working with apartments or they already, I don't know exactly how they brought them together, but I heard that they've doubled the size of their agent business, agent marketing business. It's just in a few months because they've got that team in place. So, if you looked around the audience, it wasn't all of us. There was a lot of what looked like up and coming successful realtors in the audience, which are probably spending that money. So that would be one of my things, I think, is that they've recognized HomeSnap, while it was a well-funded company, was not as well-funded as these guys, clearly, right? So I think they were able to bring in more sales discipline, because how many of you guys have HomeSnap in your market? So they do a lot of upsells, email upsells, which are very, very successful, but I think they're adding to that. So that's giving them revenue opportunities, which is giving them the opportunity to invest more and to encourage more of that type of behavior, would be my guess. But beyond that, that's just something I heard while I was in the booth. So I don't know. What have you guys heard? Any other stuff?
Pretty much the same.
Yeah. We've got one stuff pretty well integrated. It's part right into workflow. So
Yeah.
The adoption has been very, very high. So, but now it's beyond the ads. It's their premium upsell models. And where is that going to go? And capture the agents.
Right.
We've got a high adoption rate. Who see their stuff through us. So
And so one thing, we were close up because I aggressively wiggled my way and I got pretty close. Mike was like, I can't believe you're doing this. I'm like, yeah, well, it's me. Anyway, one of the things he said, and he said it kind of in passing, so I think we need to know more about this, but I think I heard what he said, which is, you know, there you see the link now between homes and HomeSnap. They were together everywhere, and that we still don't know exactly what that means. But one thing he said was that they gave up $50 million in revenue because they're adopting the your listing, your lead approach on homes.
Right.
So they're getting rid of the kind of upsell kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So he said that publicly, so I don't know exactly how that's going to play out, but he did say that.
And he also said that at Evening, when Brad was interviewing as well, that was my takeaway, was the longer play, right?
Yeah.
Which is to make homes a premier portal destination.
Consumer portal,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the long play, right?
Mhm.
To really go after realtor, to really go after Zillow.
It clearly doesn't like Zillow very much.
No, they're neither, right? No,
No.
Zillow for it.
Yeah.
That was pretty funny. But I think that's, if I had, it's like talking baseball, we could go a bit long, but
Right.
know, it's a piece play. But if I had to look at the long play that Andy has, it's really to take homes and make it that premier portal.
Yeah, and I mean, the good news about that for realtors that are taking advantage of all those leads is he knows how to, the collective he, the company, they've done that with apartments.com. That's a very, very, very strong site. It's by far the #1 rental site. So he knows how to do it. He's done it before. So they have the magic formula, and they also, HomeSnap does a lot of good stuff. I mean, Homes does too. Like
Right.
if you take the strengths of all three of those companies, put all those smart optimizers in a room, like they're going to do some good, and the money from God that they give us, that's going to be, I think, going to be really
Yeah, if you
powerful.
can seize at $50 million, you're in a good spot.
Yeah, if you can just write that off and keep going, yeah, you've got some capital behind this. And they're pretty
Asking
serious.
the question of where the money's coming in from in the future is the right question. Because
Absolutely.
that's one of the things, that chessboard I talked about, that's one of the things we talk about is where's the money? Follow the money. And is that money intersecting with something of ours? Or is that money coming in to be something better for our subscribers and members?
Yeah, for sure. And Stone Point, let's not forget about them.
Right.
People keep calling it Lone Wolf. It's Stone Point. Stone Point has already invested $5 billion in real estate. They've invested $21 billion in financial services. That's not just, CoStar's one of the players, but they're not the only player.
Yeah.
Stone Point's someone we have to look at as well.
So we need to look for our Stone Point invitation for a party.
Right.
That's right. There was Stone Point. They didn't have any fun last night. Anyway, I think we're just about out of time. Does anybody else have any questions? Any closing thoughts you guys want? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's not a question, it's actually two things. It's a thank you and it's a compliment. So thank you guys for being here. We really appreciate it. I'm going to ask what's in need because it is a tire selection. I really appreciate you coordinating with me.
I'm already bought and paid for it. What can I say?
All right,
You're going to have to
thanks,
go to the
everybody.
booth and get that back.
I'm going to trade for my Tesla.
All right, well, thank you guys for coming
All right,
out.
thank you,
and
everybody.
talking about it.